in the last days, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, and your old men shall see visions, and your young men shall dream dreams. This is Jesus Christ whom they've pierced. This is a prophetic reference before it ever happened of the fact that Jesus Christ is going to be nailed to the cross by His own people. They'll look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad Drimmon in the valley of Megiddo. Where's that at? That's the valley of Megiddo. That's referred to as the Armageddon. This is the place where Christ is going to save His people and redeem them. This, of course, we know from studying the book of Revelation, happens after Christ takes His church out of this world. Friend, listen, today you're saved and you're part of the church, and you need to get that in your head. It's important to understand where you fit in with all of these events that are in the Old Testament and the New Testament that have to do with the Christ's future work. We, as Gentiles, are privileged to be grafted in to the true branch. It's a privilege today that all men can come to Christ because His people have rejected Him. But understand that this is a window of opportunity. There's a window of opportunity. And a window of opportunity means the door was open and someday the door will be closed. Your friends need to come to Christ before Christ comes to us.
Yes.
To take His church home. Your family need to come to Christ before Christ comes to us to take His church home. Can I say to you, the way you live matters? The way you live matters. It matters, first of all, because of your testimony, but it matters, secondly, because of how Christ is going to find you. If Jesus were to come during this message, how would you be found with regards to your heart? Well, wouldn't it be great if we were snatched up into heaven as part of the church? But let me ask you a question. Are your affairs in order? Are your affairs in order? Are things taken care of? Is your life what you want it to be when Christ returns for you? Do you want to stand before the Lord the way that you're living today? It ought to have good application to you and I. We need to be ready for Christ's return. Jesus says the Scripture says in chapter 13 and verse 1, "In that day shall be a fountain opened to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness." Friend, this is after the church is taken up. The church is taken out, and God once again is going to redeem His whole nation, the people of Israel. This fountain that is opened up is the fountain of Christ's blood. This is the fountain of Christ's blood. He was the sin sacrifice for His people. And as a nation, these individuals are going to come to Him. We're going to see that there's 2/3 that reject Him and 1/3 that turns to Him. We'll see what He does as a good shepherd. Now, here are some characteristics of that day. This will be following the Great Tribulation. It'll be a time when Christ comes to deal with sin. He's going to come as a judge, a righteous judge of this world. "It shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land." This is when Christ comes and rules and reigns on this earth. He says, "I'm going to cut off the idols in the land. And they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land." Now let me ask you a question. What happened every time a true prophet of God prophesied destruction to the nation of Israel? It's not a trick question. It's not very plain. What was the response to every prophet that preached destruction for sin to the nation of Israel and to Judah?
They were right.
Well, they were right, but what was the response?
Rejection.
Rejection.
Scoffing.
What did the people do? How did they reject Christ?
They scoffed Him.
Scoffed Him? Well, that's true. Jeremiah, remember Jeremiah goes before the king and he writes a letter, and he gets taken to the king and he cuts it up. God says rewrite it. Rewrote it and added some curses because of the rejection. What happens is every time a true prophet of God comes, a false prophet comes and says everything's all right. Right?
Yeah.
It won't come to pass. This is going to happen, or that's going to happen. We're going to have deliverance from Egypt. We're going to have deliverance from Syria. We're going to have deliverance. Not going to happen. There's going to come a day when Christ rules and reigns on earth when false prophecies will be rejected. Matter of fact, even the false prophets themselves will live in fear of judgment. Look at this. in chapter 13, in verse 2, the second part, it says, It shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirits to pass out of the land. So God says, He's going to, the Lord of hosts, which is the Lord, the King of kings, Lord of lords. That's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, Jehovah. That's the Christ, the Messiah. He is going to eliminate false prophets. And it says in verse 3, It shall come to pass that when any shall yet prophesy, and his father and his mother that begat him shall say unto him, Thou shalt not live, for thou speakest lies in the name of the Lord. And his father and his mother that begat him shall thrust him through when he prophesieth. Deuteronomy chapter 13. Deuteronomy chapter 13. Verse 6. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go down and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, namely of the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the one end of the earth, even unto the other end of the earth. Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones that he die, because he has sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Did Israel keep that promise? Did Israel keep that commandment? If they had, they'd never had idolatry. They would never have tolerated false prophets. But rather instead, the nation, the people of Israel, had a spirit that said we would prefer a false prophet with a good message than a true prophet with a message that's not to our liking. Friend, can I say to you, it'd be better to have truth than a lie? And if the truth is that you're living in sin and God's hand of judgment is going to come upon your life, that'll help you a lot more than somebody saying nothing will happen. Sin reaps consequences. The consequence is destruction. And there's going to come a time, the Scripture says, when God the Son is going to rule and reign on this earth. And with regard to idolatry and false prophets, the people are going to say, we're not having a part of this. In Deuteronomy, chapter 13, literally, your son or your daughter or your sister or your brother or somebody comes into your home and says, let's go down after this false god. Let me get him before somebody else does. Let me be the first to deal with sin. What about it, Christian? What about it when it comes to sin? Do you feel as though, well, this one's too close to home? Well, this is my son, or this is my daughter, or this is. Friend, I'm not saying in the church age, the Scripture nowhere commands in the church age for us to put people that disagree with us about religion to death. Brother Mark and I were talking about that today. How convenient it would be if we could just eradicate false religion, but that's not God's way. God's way is Jesus Christ. And His way is, by the way, infinitely better than any of my plans or schemes. Well, in verse 3, it shall come to pass that when any shall yet prophesy, the last part of the verse says, his father and his mother that begat him shall thrust him through when he prophesieth. Here you have a false prophet. His father and mother say, we're not having that. And in verse 4 it says, it shall come to pass in that day. By the way, some people look to this and they try to say, well, here is a messianic, this is a messianic allusion here in verse 6. Let's read down to verse 6 from verse 4. It shall come to pass in that day that the prophet shall be ashamed every one of his vision. Here we find a time of unawakened consciences. Do you believe that all the people that say they know God honestly believe they do, or do you think that some of them are deliberately misleading? Wouldn't you say that at least some of them are deliberately misleading? There's going to come a time, though, when people are afraid to do that. And boy, what a time that'll be. That'll be a time of judgment. And here are going to be some false prophets that are going to be saying, well, I had a vision, but let me tell you something, it's no good. I had a vision, but it's no good. I had some prophecy, but let me just tell you, it's junk. You don't want it. It's not the truth. And they're literally going to acknowledge and going to shy away from their false religion because there will be consequences for their lies.